Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a word. Well, a bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a word. Well, a bird, bird, bird.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this special edition of The Word, where today we're going to rebut Laura Sentineal's testimony before the Ontario Legislature on Bill 156. Laura Sentineal is an owner-operator of Sentineal Carriages Incorporated, operating out of Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. Now, what she's doing before this hearing is unbeknownst to me, since it doesn't involve her business at all. It doesn't make any sense. She's operating a exploitation business using horses in a public space downtown Niagara-on-the-Lake. This bill is geared towards, with regards to animal agriculture, with regards to consuming the flesh and bodies and secretions of non-human people. It's just beyond me why she's even involved in this, but obviously she was using it as a platform to create a lot of conjecture and present a lot of false information before parliamentarians with regards to the activities of activists fighting against her business. So this is going to be a rebuttal where we take her point for point and provide a little thing called evidence and information, which is actual, factual, and truth. So let's begin. So we will begin by walking through her initial 7-minute testimony, if we can call it that, and we will dissect it as we go along.
Sure. Laura Sentineal. Laura, are you present?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Myself, along with my husband and our family, are owners of Sentineal Carriages in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We have been operating horse and carriage services in the Niagara region for the past 27 years. Our business consists of tours on the streets of Niagara-on-the-Lake. We also provide horse-drawn carriages for weddings, funerals, parade, film, and television. We take pride in the care and condition and training of our horses. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you a snapshot of my living reality with animal rights activists. June 3rd, I received a messenger notification from a friend, an Instagram post from @War4Animals Niagara, in response to one of our friendly posts.
Okay, let's stop it right there. Already Laura's misleading information here. This was not taken from an @War4Animals Niagara post on Instagram. This is my own profile from which she pulled this, in which I hashtagged 31 different things. She's only referencing @War4Animals Niagara, specifically targeting that, although I hashtagged her organization as well as many others. There's 31 hashtags in that post. So why is she doing that? Why is she making this correlation between my individual post to @War4Animals Niagara? You have to concern yourself with wondering what that actually entails. What's going on here?
It reads as follows. This is the actual post. It's a screenshot. Hashtag @War4Animals Niagara. Jason King. Everybody operating in Niagara-on-the-Lake must be hurting financially. This may be a joke, but it's very telling that they are thinking of other ways to exploit and use horses to generate profits while they cannot put them out on the streets. Why the hell can't they just stop thinking of horses as machines to work for humans as slaves? Be sure to join us when they hit them hard. Protests immediately upon the return to the streets of Niagara-on-the-Lake. Be ready. While we wait, we are designing new posters, crafting new tactics, and planning for more actions to up the pressure.
Okay, a little bit of drama for you there. Nice deep sigh. But ultimately, Nothing criminal going on here. This is democracy. This is the way things are done. This is what protesters do. They organize. They execute. There's no threats in here. There's no ill will to the human beings behind this endeavor to exploit horses. And also, there's also a lack of information with regards to the posts that she posted, to which I am replying to in this comment. This was a comment, and granted, I recognize that they were just joking, but they were suggesting that they could sell their horses out to individuals, or rent them out, to cut their grass for them during the COVID-19 situation while they aren't able to make money off of the horses by dragging human asses around. They were going to suggest they could rent them out as lawn mowers. I find that extremely, extremely offensive, even just as a joke. So as offensive as I find that statement of theirs to be, even though they're just joking, she's finding it extremely stressful and upsetting that we responded to this with, something as menial as just saying we're planning to come back.
Even in the middle of this pandemic, under lockdown, it continues. Right now, my family and our horses are fine. We are all here at the farm enjoying the moderate security and safety of being here. For all farmers, we included, life has maintained its usual rhythm, and the realities of life stay safely at the other edges. We take care of our horses, our farm, and each other. Sorry. We plan and prepare to restart our business as resources run low. Hoping it will be sooner or later. I'm so sorry.
Nothing gets faster to a conservative's heart than somebody bawling their eyes out at the loss of profits, especially since it comes off of the backs of somebody else.
Would you like a few moments?
I'm soldiering on. And something as simple as this brings it all back, and the reality hits hard. If we can make it through this with our health and a few groceries remaining, at war will be waiting. This is not new. For 3 years, we have endured, we have carried on. We have explored every option and avenue that we assumed and imagined we might have had to protect our horses, our staff, our guests, our family, our lives, and our livelihood. There is nothing. I do not really worry about the grandstanding and the chest pounding, sticks and stones, if you will. What keeps me awake at night is the thinly veiled, carefully crafted threats of destruction, the pure hatred, potential violence, and harm to everything I hold dear.
Okay, so this is where she's starting to lay it on pretty thick. Carefully crafted threats of destruction. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know how to put this into any context with regards to us just legally demonstrating and protesting, holding signs in the vicinity of where she's operating the horse carriages. Care to elaborate, Laura? You're not going to hear it on this video.
Now we have at war's latest manifesto and rallying cry.
Okay, so now we see some more language that fosters an emotional response from people, such as the use of the word manifesto and rallying cry. It's just a simple post. Just a simple post. And also, again, she attributes it to At War for Animals Niagara, which is not. It is simply my words, my Instagram post, my feed. Again.
Now what? Based on past experiences, there is no limit to the possibilities of At War's dedication to destroy our business, my family, and our reality that once we leave the farm, we have no protection.
Okay, so now Laura is suggesting that the activists demonstrating and protesting her horse exploitation business have destroyed her business and her family. Well, we can actually go back and see what your previous experiences have been through media releases and interviews you've given to the local newspaper Niagara Now, as well as also known as the Lake Report. So, we happen to catalog this information for future use, and there's no better time than now. So, July 29th, 2018, under the title Niagara-on-the-Lake Horse Carriage Supporters Question Treatment of Protesters, after a large rally of about 80 people, protesters rallying to demonstrate against the horse carriages that day. If we go through this document, we'll find that at the very end of it, Laura, you actually said, and I quote, Laura Sentinel said, at the end of the day, she had to credit Stir, who's the founder of At War for Animals Niagara, for keeping things contained. And that for her, she had a good time seeing friends and supporters that came out. She said, in the long run, protesters are good for business. Okay. Fast forward a couple more weeks. She gives another quote to the same periodical, Niagara Now. August 9th, 2018, under the heading, Protesters Support Agree to Some Guidelines. We're going to talk about that agreement coming up shortly, because this is really critical for other things that Laura says in the future of this video. However, at this point, I'm going to read another line from this. Laura says, so far, the protests have not hurt their business, Sentinel said. The protests may even have helped by drawing supportive tourists' attention to the carriage rides. So, this is evidence, proof, and we have your words today suggesting that we're destroying your business and your family, and you're afraid to come down and do your business. Which is it? Ultimately, we are not trying to destroy your business. We're trying to modify it. We're trying to encourage you to do the right thing and get rid of an antiquated, outdated, very maniacal business model which exploits other sentient beings, in this case horses, so that you can profit from their lives. We've suggested many times, and you're very well aware, that what we would like to see is that you transition, with the help of the municipality, to electric carriages, which is better for the horses, the environment, and your bottom line. But you refuse to see that, and instead you prefer to attack us in public venues such as the Ontario Legislature.
The police have told me there is nothing we can do, over and over and over again. I don't even call them anymore. We are completely and absolutely on our own. We are farmers. Horse and carriage services is our market product. This makes us a prime target in public, on the streets, for radical AR people far and wide. This is our last avenue. We cannot continue in the same vein with an abundance of sympathy and support from our community, businesses, our Lord Mayor and Council, but no legislative protection.
The police are telling you that there's nothing they can do for you, not because they're denying you service, but because they are giving you good service. They've been involved from pretty much the beginning of the protests on your business. They've monitored both sides. They've come out when calls are made, and they've never found any reason to act. Their job is to prosecute crimes. It is not to be your goon squad and run people out of town that you have disagreements with. That's the problem here, is you just really don't want us there, because you know that informed people make better decisions. And when we inform people with our signs and our literature and our message to them, they walk away. They choose to do the right thing. You choose to continue to run and operate a business which is antiquated and out of date. That's on you, not the police, not us.
As other protective measures are introduced through Bill 156, we and our family become an even larger target. I would never move to interfere with anyone's charter rights. However, when the charter is used as a shield to allow behavior that would otherwise never be accepted or unchallenged, unbalanced, nullifying our same rights. I sincerely hope that our situation is considered as the bill moves forward, that a balance can be restored. My desire is to be able to know that my staff, my family, and horses will be safe in our workplace. I thank you so very much for this opportunity.
Don't want to interfere with people's Charter of Rights and Freedoms? Wow, that's special. Unfortunately, the case is that was actually the very first thing that you tried to do, was to try to get us to not have signs. And how did you do that? You called bylaw officer Victoria Wickabrod, who you are a close family friend of, as well as she is a former employee of yours, and now works for the municipality of Niagara-on-the-Lake as a bylaw officer. Activists saw her repeatedly meeting with you in your truck behind the horse carriages in uniform, writing in a notepad while you talked to her. And then soon after that, we received these nice notification of violation letters from the municipality of Niagara-on-the-Lake that we were in violation of their sign bylaw. You see, you don't like us holding signs because it's informative to people who you sucker into hopping onto your carriage rides. But this was an opportunity for you to exploit somebody that you knew in the township to circumvent our rights to use any media that we choose necessary to exercise our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So don't go on about this crap that you don't want to circumvent people's Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That was the first thing you tried to do, was take away that right of ours. But we weren't scared. And since then, no violation charges have been laid on us, and we continued to go back with signs. So don't try that one. Our protests do not infringe or violate your Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You're showing up with your horse carriages every single day, just as you always do. You conduct your business. That's not being infringed upon. That's the extent of your Charter of Rights. Ours is to stand there and protest your business and hold signs. That's constitutionality in action. That's democracy. That's the way it works. Just because you don't like it and it affects you, that's not an infringement upon your rights. The slaves you have are not in danger. Your employees are not in danger. You and the security and safety of your family is not in danger with people practicing their Charter of Rights and Freedoms. If you feel upset, if you feel butthurt, if you feel threatened, it is only because society is changing and you are on the wrong side of it. Perhaps you should probably listen to the tides of change.
Do you believe that farm facilities, processing facilities should be protected by some type of trespass act?
Hi, thank you. Although what we're doing has nothing to do with food production, so I really can't speak on that particular issue, except to say I have several friends in the area that have small little farms, and the animals are treated better than I am. In our case, we do, up until this point in time, our farm is always open for anybody who wanted to come in with pleasure. Now we have to be a little more diligent and a little more careful, because my experience and my reality is that there are people out there who, although they say they're there for the horses, I've also been told that they would love to see them go to slaughter. Going to slaughter would be better for them than the life we give them.
There are people out there. That's an interesting turn of phrase. It's basically saying, ooh, the boogeyman's out there and they're going to come and get me. You know, there's no evidence to this. If there are people that are saying this, don't be afraid to say their names. Call them out. I'm sure you would if you had the evidence to do so. But since there's no evidence to support calling anyone out, we have to create this narrative of the boogeyman's out there, because it's the only thing that's going to work. with people who don't consider evidence as necessary for making accusations and stuff. As to with regards to this comment about some people have told you, I suggest you're referring to activists, that the horses would be better off being slaughtered than being exploited and used by Sentineal Carriages. I don't even know where this comes from. None of us have ever said this. It's not been a platform for any activist group that I'm ever heard of. Nobody's ever said that. In fact, what we have said is that if you're not prepared to provide shelter and care and love and compassion to these horses on the spaces of the farmlands that you provide them now, to the end of their natural death without exploiting and using them for profiteering, then you should be providing them access to sanctuaries where they can go spend out the rest of their lives with. And we would also suggest that government provisions should be flowing into sanctuaries to provide for non-human people that escape and survive, continue to survive with their lives after exploitation ends. So that's what we do say. Nobody has ever suggested that anyone should be put to slaughter because they can't work. In fact, that's actually your narrative, is that if they cannot work, if they don't have the means to go to work, then the only solution you have, because you can't care for them financially, is to go to slaughter. So don't turn this around on us. It is in fact your industry and people like you, the speciesists like you, that say these things, that horses will go to slaughter if they are not allowed to go to work. That's BS.
So under, that pretense, I feel that farmers, their life is invested in everything, and we should be protected from people who are not always thoroughly educated on the subject, that go more with feelings and facts.
I really take exception to humans who exploit non-human people, such as farmers and the horse carriage operators, exploiting this term education. They suggest that we just aren't educated enough to make decisions on the lives of other sentient beings and make moral decisions based upon not knowing how they exploit animals or what they're doing to them or the reasons why they do it. The term education is quite co-opted, and there is good education, but there's also bad education. Education that is actually should be termed indoctrination, such as when I go to the doctor's office and I find 3 or 4 Dairy Farmers of Canada periodicals mixed in with the medical information. These are literally ads that are placed there and sold. The doctors receive funding from these third-party organizations that compile these propaganda advertisements to place them surreptitiously in doctors' offices to be somehow misconstrued as medical information or education. We also see that Dairy Farmers of Canada spend a great deal of money making sure that milk programs continue in schools to indoctrinate children to think that drinking the secretions from cow breasts is healthy and natural. This is nothing more absurd than that. But they continually use this phrasing of you must be educated to be able to make decisions. And yes, I would much prefer to deal with somebody that actually has feelings and is also coming at me with a lot of facts, rather than the form of education that you would prefer people to have.
And it's our property. This is, we pay the taxes, we pay the mortgages, we pay the bills. We should be able to maintain some reasonable control over it.
Yes, we hear this quite often. Get out of our town. This is our town, not yours. You're foreigners. Get away from us. Don't tell us how to run our town. We're going to run you out of town. All these things. It's like this Republic of Niagara-on-the-Lake. You know, that they have this weird concept that they are not part of Canada. They are not part of Ontario. They are a very independent, exclusive group of people who have the right to control the dominion of their own town. That if you do not believe the things that they believe, if you believe in other forms of justice and morality, you're not welcome there. Funny being that this is promoted as the friendliest town in Canada. That's never been my experience there. But in fact, you are part of Canada and you will follow Canadian laws. And just because you pay the taxes there does not give you the right to run people out of your town because they have different opinions than you do.
My first question through the chair to you, that you read some material in your presentation, and I'm wondering if that feeling, obviously it was very emotional for you, if that feeling, or I guess if those comments are mostly directed through like social media and those types of ways, or are you experiencing those types of comments like on your private property at your farm?
Who was that question directed at, MPP Schreiner?
To Laura from Sentineal.
Thank you, Laura.
Oh, thank you. Honestly, we haven't really had any confrontations at our farm. And in a lot of ways, I would actually prefer that. It would be easier to manage. The social media aspect of it, quite honestly, I don't pay much attention to. It's just social media. Our biggest experience with the derogatory comments is literally face-to-face on the streets as we're working, between myself, every member of my family, all of our staff, even local people who don't particularly agree with what the protesters are saying. And, our community has really embraced us and feels very protective of us and our horses. So people do become quite upset when they see them, and it's not really the seeing them. We found that the activists really try to provoke people.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, but let me go back to where she starts talking about derogatory comments. Of course there's going to be derogatory comments. What do you expect? Activists to be nice to you? You're literally enslaving other individuals for your profiteering. Yes, there's going to be a difference of opinions here, and it's going to be heated, and it's going to be quite vigorous, and there's going to be a lot of critical discussion, and there's nothing wrong with this. This is just discourse. It's quite normal. So you should just accept it and get used to it. Next, you start talking about the town people are protective of your horse carriage business, and that your staff and the townspeople don't particularly agree with us, and that's fine and good. But what you're also trying to do here is you're trying to exempt them from their culpability in driving up the tension and the vitriol towards the activists. You're trying to insulate them from being part of the problem here, because you instantly then go to the activists are trying to provoke people. But just prior to that, you were trying to excuse the behaviors and the actions and the behaviors of the townspeople, your employees, and yourselves as family, who are extremely emotional about this topic. Granted, that's reasonable, but ultimately you're trying to insulate them from the responsibility of provoking the activists. But we don't buy into it. We don't nibble at your little provocations, because we've seen them all, we're used to it, and we also practice de-escalation so that we don't allow these things to overrun our better judgment. That's why there's never been a charge or an investigation into any one of our activists or participants in the campaign against your industry.
You know, they're trying to set up that perfect scenario where somebody just has had enough and steps over the line. These types of things, trying to scare our horses, trying to wear down our employees.
Again, evidence is pretty key. When you make accusations like this, you should have some evidence to back it up. Fortunately for us, we document every moment that we're there protesting with multiple angles through multiple cameras all the time. We database all this, we index it, and we're able to pull it on a moment's notice to show us exactly what transpires all the time that we're there. So it's film time, folks. I have a little film that I want you to watch.
My man, I'm gonna break that camera.
It's right here.
You're not allowed to take a picture of it.
Okay. Call the police.
Counter protest or whatever. You don't have to stand in front of me. Then don't talk to me.
Okay, I started over there.
You're going that way.
Yeah,
Garbage.
you're obstructing me.
So what? Where are you going?
Okay, let's go. Yeah, let's go. It's time to go.
I want this guy to take his camera.
Then just
Out of my
leave.
face.
Do you understand the law?
I
The
do
law
understand
is that you are in public space. Anyone can record in public space. It doesn't matter. You're talking to my friend.
You're
You can
coming
talk.
into my space now.
You're
Okay,
allowed
get
to.
out of my
This,
space.
this is public space. If you don't like being taped, go in a bathroom.
Man, that guy was ready to hit me.
I know. That's why I came
man,
over.
he was getting
That's why I came over.
He was getting ready. I was like,
Quite possibly the fattest vegan I've ever seen in my life.
thank you. Have a nice day. Really great.
How are you today?
I'm fantastic.
Weather's beautiful.
Yeah, you got like some tomato sauce around your lips, but
Good, thank you. I'm not really a picture. No, I'm good. I'm good. It smells nice. Smells nice. That's that. Asylum 13. Sorry? Asylum 13. You like training that thing on me, eh?
yeah. That's a pretty clear provocation right there by this gentleman with the cigar.
So okay.
Do not touch the camera.
I am so sorry that I bothered you.
No, you are not allowed to touch
sorry.
me. That is
I didn't
assault.
touch
Don't
you.
touch anything. Touch something I was holding.
No, I didn't even touch it. My nail grazed it.
because there have been a number of situations where the Locals for Carriages individuals and supporters of the horse carriage industry were getting pretty aggressive with the activists and provoking them. The Niagara Regional Police asked all parties involved, including Locals for Carriages, the carriage owners, and At War for Animals Niagara, to convene to work out a peaceful agreement of certain things that they would agree to abide by so that the peace can be maintained during the protesting. The first such incidents happened in August of 2018. All parties agreed to maintain a personal distance of 6 feet away from one another. And for a short time that worked. Unfortunately, the Locals for Carriages people continued to break that agreement in multiple circumstances. In October of 2019, since the initial agreement broke down, the police reconvened the same people to the table, and they again hashed out a new deal, which increased the distance from 6 feet to 10 feet between individuals and 14 feet between the activists and the horses. There were a few other minor issues that were resolved, some things that were revisited from the previous agreement, some new items were put on the table, and again, At War for Animals Niagara didn't have to do this, but they did so out of the kindness of their hearts as a show of good faith. In the end, even though the one of the two horse carriage operators, that being Sentineal Carriages, even having had the opportunity to have their say, make requests, have their requests honored and respected, they opted to not sign the agreement, as you can see here, as well as Locals for Carriages. They refused and declined to sign the very agreement that they had a hand in taking part in making. At War for Animals Niagara signed it willingly, and to this day, that agreement has been honored by all parties. So that was back in October of 2019, and 2 days ago, Laura Sentineal is talking about all this harassment and us trying to scare their horses and beating down their employees, breaking them down. I don't understand this because we've had an agreement where we've stayed 10 feet apart from one another. There hasn't been a breach of any of that since prior to October, to the October agreement of last year.
The wonderful people that we get to work with are our staff and employees, but the more like extended family. The things they have had to put up and tolerate are just past the extreme of what anybody should be expected to deal with in the workplace. If you would like, I'm sort of ready here with a few statements. If you don't mind the little added time, I'm happy to read you a typical statement from one of my drivers of their experience with the activists while they're out in Niagara-on-the-Lake and while they're trying to do their job.
So maybe one, if you don't mind, just quickly, because I want to make sure I have time to ask other
witnesses. A really short one off the top of the pile. This is from a young girl, Abby Moore, and she's about 20 years old.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right here for a second because I think this is pretty important. Out of everybody that she could have drawn off the top of that pile, she actually draws the testimonial of the most biased person in her employ. Because not only is Abby Moran an employee, Abby Moran is actually her son's girlfriend. Sean Sentineal and Abby Moran are a couple. In even this one here, you can see that Abby is calling Laura second mother here from this most recent Mother's Day. So it's really important to consider the bias of the individual you're going to hear testimony from, because she's not only biased because her financial life depends on the horse carriage business continuing to operate, but also because she has a vested interest because she's family.
Which is really typical young girls and horses. It's just a natural mix. To quote her, one day during one of their big operations, this would be the protesters, they had 10 plus big rental trucks and other cars driving all around Niagara-on-the-Lake. No matter what way I turned on our tour, there was a vehicle waiting for me. Even when I altered my normal route, they still found me. They would follow me and turn around when they saw me to make sure someone was driving in front and behind me the whole time. They would sometimes form a line in all their vehicles behind me too. This made me feel very uncomfortable, very unsafe, and my passengers were upset too.
Get out of here.
They were unsure what to
Why are
do.
you hassling my Keep your emotions in check. Get off the road.
They could throw something out the window to spook the horse. They could drive recklessly and get too close to us. So many things they could have done while they were following me that day, which makes me feel so very unsafe. And there was nothing I could do to stop them. While at the corner, there was a rest in between my tours. I had
So what Abby's trying to describe here is a very simple operation which we call rolling thunder. It's an accompanying operation that goes along with when we have active protesters at the corner near the horse carriages. The whole purpose of rolling thunder is just to get our message out to a greater audience across town. And across town actually only means 4 blocks. Old Town is very, very small, which is why the horse carriages come into contact with our vehicles so much. It's not on purpose that we drive in front of them, behind them, or come into contact with them or pass them. It's only because this town is so small, and there can be up to 5 horse carriages operating within the town at any one time. It's quite natural that there's going to be contact with between them and the vehicles. However, every single time, we maintain a proper space, no different than any other vehicles operating on the road. So Abby goes on to talk about all kinds of things, saying they could do this, they could do that. However, we've never done any of those things, and there's no evidence to suggest that rolling thunder is a detriment to the horse carriages. This is all just more conjecture from them, because what they don't want is our message being spread to everybody in town, which rolling thunder does extremely effectively. What they don't want is us getting our message across town, because almost immediately upon when we do rolling thunder, the horse carriages end up coming to a standstill and they don't get any rides for the period of while we're doing rolling thunder. So the real reason they don't like us doing rolling thunder is because it's extremely effective, not because there's any harm being done to them.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is for Laura. First off, it's actually a two-part question. You've got how many people are currently working for you? And secondly, when do you think it's appropriate that someone intimidates or scares your employees?
I have approximately in high season about 20 people, that's drivers and support staff. I think if you are, like you see yourself now, if you are doing your job, you should be afforded a little bit of respect. In what we do, there's enough challenges. You're dealing with a one-ton horse, a wonderful, super well-trained, very happy horse. You're dealing with traffic. You're dealing with your guests. And, that's manageable. But when you throw in the intimidation, the derogatory comments, and the vehicles following you, and all sorts of the things that we've dealt with over the last 3 years, it makes it so incredibly difficult. I've actually had people who love their jobs have to quit because they were really suffering mental health issues because of it. And it follows when they're not working. They're followed on social media. And I had one young man be addressed as he looked like a wife beater, and he became the wife beater. People are going to their job, a job that they enjoy doing, making a living, paying their bills, and to have this added pressure. And I mean, You know, they're 2 feet from their face.
2 feet from their faces. What kind of bullshit is that? Remember, in August of 2018, At War for Animals Niagara worked out a protocol agreement with the horse carriage operators and locals for carriages to abide by a 6-foot agreement that we wouldn't come within 6 feet of one another. Let's take a trip back to June of 2019 when we had this exchange with one of those participants in that agreement, the founder of Locals for Carriages, Jennifer Jones-Butsky. Let's see what her and her co-conspirator, Eric, had to say about that agreement.
Are you aware of the agreement?
6 million Jews was wrong. We're talking about a horse. Horses like this. They do?
Are you aware of the agreement?
I'm sorry?
Are you aware of the agreement?
The agreement is completely left alone. It's not a job, buddy. It's slavery. Irrelevant. No, horses like to work. I mean, they do? No, they don't. They do.
I never
Yes,
tried
they
anything.
do. I've been around horses for many hours. Many hours. Rode my whole life. They like it. They like it, eh? Yes, they do.
I really like this video because what it really does is shows the motivation of what Locals for Carriages is trying to do. They go to the bargaining table and they hash out agreements which is supposed to keep the peace, and then they break it. And then they even absolve themselves of even recognizing that it existed in the first place. Just because they didn't sign it doesn't mean they can't honor it. And furthermore, this video contrasts against the false narrative that Laura is trying to construct within this testimony, that we are the aggressors, we are the ones that are getting in their faces, we are the ones that are intimidating them. However, that's not the case at all. If you'll look at this video again, you will see that they are in our faces. They are within 2 feet of us. We are standing at the corner, which is approximately 20-25 feet away from the horse carriages. So this false narrative that Laura is constructing is complete bullshit, and has been for 3 years.
And our people love the horses they work with. We pair them off, you know. They're a team in every way of the term. And they're so afraid for the horses because they don't know what somebody is going to do. And it causes a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety.
If your concern is about the horses, your concern should be anybody that comes up and approaches the horses, not the protesters. The protesters have agreed to stay a distance away from the horses. You have an agreement in place. Since August of 2018, you've had the opportunity of knowing and being comfortable with the fact that the protesters are not going to approach the horses. Yet day after day, you let perfect strangers walk up to the horses and touch them. You actually encourage it. So if your concern is actually the horses, why do you let anybody approach the horses that you don't know what their intentions are?
Laura, I've got a more of a statement. Was kind of hoping that maybe you could finish off reading maybe one more of some of your staff members, concerns that they've raised over the years. If we could maybe find something that could only maybe take a couple of minutes. I know that Mr. Barrett also has a question as well.
Okay, sure. So just launch into a statement here.
Please do, yes.
Okay. This is from Shay. My name is Shay Vandenberg. I'm a 15-year-old student at Keaton High School. I've been employed with Sentineal Carriages for 2 years.
Wait, what? She's 15 now, and she's been working for Sentineal Carriages for 2 years. That means she was working for them when she was 13. That also means that Sentineal Carriages was employing an underage minor. You have to be 14 years of age in Ontario to work. That's interesting.
I had, on a date, I had a very upsetting experience at work due to protesters in the old town of Niagara-on-the-Lake. This morning I arrived at the corner of King and Queen Street where the carriages are parked around 11 a.m. I was called into work early due to the presence of the protesters at the corner. As soon as I got dropped off at the corner, I immediately felt intimidated by the presence of many protesters who were surrounding my work area, where I would normally stand to give horses water and help the drivers. Since I was not comfortable being there by myself, I went to the other drivers and went on an hour tour with her just to get out of there. So I think this sort of gives you the idea. This poor girl ended up calling me, and she was hysterical. And she is a tough young girl. Don't let 15 fool you. And she was very upset. I also have a letter from her mother, which she actually sent to the local paper and was printed as an editorial. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. And
I don't think it's fair to characterize intimidation by simply being in the presence of protesters. There's no context given by Laura to suggest that there was any interactions that could possibly lead to some form of intimidation. She only, in this statement, reads that she felt intimidated by being in the presence of protesters. That just means people are standing around nearby holding signs, and you didn't like it. Give some context. Give an account of something that's actually intimidating. No one can be intimidated simply by being in the presence of others. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, my first question is for Laura. Laura, what you've been experiencing it sounds more like harassment than trespass, because you said the actions haven't taken place on your farm, they've actually taken place on the street. When you phone the police, have they said anything? But we do have, there's in the criminal code, harassment is specifically stated, and there's a definition of it. Why do the police say that what you're experiencing doesn't fall under the Harassment Act?
Well, thank you for asking that. I, of course, don't know the hearts and minds of the police, but I've been through every bit of legislation pertaining to our situation, and it is there, from harassment to following vehicles.
Laura seems to be making a big deal about following vehicles. I wonder if she got the idea from what her son did back in November of 2018 after activists left from a protest, and her son, Sean Sentinel, was videoed for about 20 minutes following activists through town, like deliberately, right behind them the whole time. That's actually following somebody. Let's have a look. Here's a screenshot of Sean's Facebook profile featuring his car. As soon as the activists started to leave Niagara-on-the-Lake Old Town, they noticed that Sean was following them in his car. You can tell by the light conditions that it's still daytime. And then 20 minutes later, as the sun was going down, it's much darker. As Sean followed them out into the country as they were leaving, they turned off the road. He goes by. They turn around to reposition the truck that they're in. He turns around up the road and then slowly drives by them again as he's on his way to an intersection, and then he drives from the area. If the carriage operators are so concerned about people following vehicles, perhaps they should practice what they preach.
Harassment to following vehicles around a horse on the road, that's a provincial bylaw or law violation.
Sometimes it hurts just to listen to her ramble on, but I'm pretty sure that's not a law, bylaw, provincial violation.
There seems to be an unwillingness by the police to pursue it. And probably my best guess is they don't want to take on, a charter challenge, that sort of thing.
Yes, Laura, it is not the police's job to challenge the Charter of Rights and Freedoms on your behalf.
I don't know. They don't want to make it worse, but in the meantime, their unwillingness, their inactivity activity to actually do anything has given our activists sort of it's widened their agenda, and it's given them sort of the feeling that they can keep moving forward with their agenda.
That right there might be the most critical, damaging information that Laura gives us from her entire statement to the Ontario Legislature. And that is that she's not expecting the police to do their job and investigate and prosecute crimes. She actually wants the police to make the protesters feel like they cannot continue their agenda. An agenda is not a crime. An agenda is not something that you can prevent from happening just because you don't like it. But hey, don't take my word for it. Here's the police themselves giving an update to the Niagara-on-the-Lake City Council on July 15th in 2019.
Members of the City Council, my name is Inspector Jim McCaffrey. I'm the District Commander for 2 District.
So call the police definition. And is there any sort of transition from a public protest to a public nuisance? Is there a description where it becomes something other than what it originally was said was intended to be?
I would think if you start inciting violence, if you start committing criminal conduct, or if you start stopping the public from moving freely about town, we would look at it differently. And then it doesn't become a demonstration. At this point, that's all that's happening, is a demonstration.
Laura, under Bill 156, it goes into fairly detail on citizen's arrest, and that after you make a citizen's arrest, then you contact the police. Would you be comfortable with making a citizen's arrest, or would any of your employees be comfortable with making a citizen's arrest?
Absolutely not. The people that we are dealing with quite often carry handcuffs, and who knows what else. We have been warned that we have to stay away, that we cannot antagonize. We have sort of, in a weird roundabout sense, been the problem.
Yes, you have been the problem all along.
In looking for justice and equality, that is absolutely. Would you have your 20-year-old daughter try to do a citizen's arrest on some 40-year-old guy with handcuffs and who knows, maybe a knife or a stun gun? Absolutely not.
And there you go with more fear-mongering. Oh, they might have a knife. They might have a stun gun. Well, might have, but there has never been. How about we deal with reality instead of make-believe?
This is why I do respect their right to express their feelings. We just need distance, a bit of a buffer zone so they can be over there expressing their feelings and their thoughts, and we can be safe doing what we do.
You had space. 6 feet since August of 2018 and 10 feet as of October 2019. The first agreement, your support group, Locals for Carriages, broke, and in 2019, you refused to sign the very agreement that you constructed. What more can you want from protesters? This doesn't happen. No protesters come to a table like this and offer you distance.
Running our business, our drivers should be safe. Our horses should be safe. The public should be safe. They can feel and think and say what they want. We just need some space. We need a barrier that honestly I think would work in beautifully as an animal protection zone. That's all we're asking for. I'm not looking to shut down anybody's opinions.
What is this animal protection zone going to look like in a public space? You operate the horse carriages down the street, and everybody who has an opinion against it has to run for shelter. They have to run 20 meters away from you. You have to have this buffer zone that moves through a public space, in a public sphere, and everybody who doesn't share the same opinion of you has to run for and duck for cover, or they can be criminally charged. What is that going to look like? That's pathetic. It's ridiculous.
But I don't want ours shut down. I don't want our rights shut down. And I'm tired of people, us, my family, myself. I've had death threats, for goodness sake.
I'm 100% confident that absolutely none of you have had a death threat against you. Not you, not your family, not your employees, not Locals for Carriages, none of you. Because if there was, the police liaison officer would give us a call instantaneously. And I'm sure that the Niagara Regional Police would investigate that thoroughly. We would expect the same from them if we had any death threats, which we have not. We have had threats, though, lots of them. In 3 years of activism, detectives have only knocked on the doors of Locals for Carriages supporters and people who support the horse carriages to warn them about their social media threats against the activists. Only on your side have the police had to go knock on doors to warn people of their behavior. Not one protester has ever had a police come knocking at their door. Not in 3 years.
I'm tired of us living with this. It's always there. It never goes away. It subsides and then it's back. This is no way to have to conduct a business in Ontario, Canada in 2020. Thank you.
Okay. Chair, may I ask Laura a question, please?
Yes, you may.
How long have you been in this business, Laura?
Approximately 27 years. My husband grew up in Niagara-on-the-Lake. He's been doing it since he was a teenager. I grew up in a condo in Toronto.
Okay. So you've been in, so all in all, 27 years would be a appropriate term.
Right.
How long have you been experiencing these threats, as you call them?
It's been about 3 years now.
The question was, how long have you been receiving threats? And she says 3 years. That's how long she's been under protest. She's never been under threat. Not once. There's no evidence of it. She provides none here. The police have indicated there's never been any issues. So what is she talking about?
Yeah.
About 3 years?
Yeah.
And are these threats continuing?
Yes. They come at us in different forms, in different ways, and different levels of intensity. But yeah, it's pretty continual. I mean, the statement I read you at the beginning, that was from their Instagram post. I mean, who knows what they're planning?
People announcing that they're going to return to protesting when they can, and vigorously, that's not a threat. There's no connotation of violence accompanied with that statement. You should really understand language before you start speaking.
I mean, and that was last week, June 3rd. Who knows what they're planning? And you don't know. I know they really don't care about the well-being of our horses. They certainly don't care about our well-being. I mean,
Spoken like a real human supremacist there. We don't care about the horses, and we certainly don't care about the humans' well-being.
Over and over again, they've said and in person and in writing that, they want to get rid of us, they want us gone, our horses would be better off going to slaughter. That's our reality, and that's what we live with on a day-to-day basis.
That's quite the exaggeration. She suggested that this is what they live with on a day-to-day basis, when we actually protest them less than 3% of the time they're operating. Less than 3% of the time. That means 97% of the time, we aren't even there. That's not your day-to-day existence.
I mean, obviously we haven't been out because of the quarantine, but I dread going back out there. who knows what they've got planned.
Well, Laura, since you're so concerned, let me fill you in on what we've got planned next. More of the same. If you return your antiquated business model of exploiting horses to the streets of Niagara-on-the-Lake, so too the protesters will come back. And we'll continue to legally, creatively protest to get our message out. Yes, we do care about the horses. We care about them a lot. And no, we don't want you to go away. We want your business model to evolve to electric carriages. One thing's for certain, though, is so long as the horses are operating in the streets of Niagara-on-the-Lake, the protesters will be there. We will not go away.
Committee, the newly introduced legislation, and again, and I apologize, I'm not sure who started to answer the question, but what kind of balance are we seeing? We're now dealing with essentially 3 pieces of legislation that address some of the controversies and conflicts we're talking about this morning.
MPP Barrett, who was your question directed towards?
Whoever started to answer the last time, and I just opened it up to the witness table.
Would any
Whoever
of the...
would like to address it.
Thank you. If any of the presenters would like to respond, please raise your hand. Laura, I see your hand raised.
Hi. Yes, I believe we all need balance. I mean, but it has to be in a way that farmers and people within agriculture can protect their animals and their livelihood. In my experience,
there's 1 minute left.
There's so much misinformation out there.
Can I speak after?
We need balance. In our case, we need distance, and farmers and their herds and flocks, they need protected. Thank you.
All right, so there you have it. That's the end of that session of the public hearings on Bill 156, which involved Laura Sentineal. In the end there, she was again requesting distance, which she had already successfully negotiated with the protesters on 2 occasions, and fails to appreciate what she already had. It's important to note that she didn't mention or provide evidence to not one situation of intimidation, harassment, provocation, anything. She made no direct references to any situations. She cited no criminal investigations at all. All that she provided was conjecture and supposition. That's it. There's absolutely no evidence in anything that she said, any of the testimonials that she read from. Also noteworthy is pretty much everything she's accused At War for Animals Niagara of doing, her family or her supporters or Locals for Carriages have done exactly that to us. So in conclusion to this rebuttal against Laura Sentineal's testimony before the Ontario Legislature, I'm going to reiterate that the protests and the campaigning will continue in whatever form it takes. When they return to the streets, it will continue until the horse carriage no longer exists. We do hope that the carriage operators will update their antiquated business model to one of a more ethical nature, such as electric carriages. In switching to electric carriages, there's multiple benefits. First being that you increase the market of people that are willing to step onto your carriages. When you remove the horses from the equation, nobody has any ethical issues with stepping up and taking a ride. 2, the overhead costs of keeping multiple horses alive year-round is removed. So less overhead, more profits into your pocket. And when you have more profits and the operating costs are only a few dollars a day to operate a carriage plus labor, you can lower the cost of your carriages so that more people have access to it. I don't understand why you refuse to switch to this model. But in the end, the choice is yours. If you return to the streets, so too do the protesters. If you upgrade your model, you get new clients instead of protesters. And that has been The Word. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of The Word. And one more thing to say before we depart here today. We would like to congratulate Laura Sentineal for outstanding performance and taking the lead over Jennifer Jones-Butsky in the Activist of the Year Award from At War for Animals Niagara. Congratulations, Laura. You found a way to etch past Jennifer that we never expected. You found a way to make our activism relevant in a forum where it really isn't. And you took it to such a high level, right to the Legislature of Ontario. So congratulations, keep up the good work and spreading our name everywhere you can and making everybody know that there's a problem in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Keep up the good work.